Why do you guys want to do this show?
I just want money and power.
Because you asked me.
Because politicians can be, what's the P word I'm looking for?
You like pettiness, right?
Yes,
There's a lot
I
of
do.
petty kind of shade.
I was thinking something else, but okay, let's roll with it.
Jeez, all right.
A podcast that talks about politics in a different way.
You want to talk about politics in a way that is real. Politics is funny.
It's petty
That's the kind of politics stuff I like to talk about.
politics with Keisha,
Oh, now I gotta try to sound smart.
Sean Skipworth.
Campaign finance stuff, it's getting out of control.
Learn,
You're giving vast sums of money.
Because, it's a lot like town gossip.
laugh,
Here we go. How's this going to go?
oh, and subscribe.
Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Petty Politics. That's the name of the show, right?
That is the name of the show.
Are we sure?
We could always change it now if we want to. We'll edit this out. No one's going to listen to this, right?
So we decided to do a show about politics, mostly because Professor Skipworth and also Councilman Skipworth, you're still both those things, right?
I'm still both those things.
Okay, just want to make sure, because sometimes I make up shit and I just say it like it's the truth because I believe it.
But president, yeah.
One day, maybe, we'll see.
I
We'll
don't
see.
know.
I'm not ready for you to be president because you were probably like, Keisha, I have to fire you as a friend.
I'm not ready to do that.
That's a whole new level. I'm gonna be like, can I have a room in the White House painted all pink? Can you do that?
I think you have to drink blood at night to be a president, be a politician like that. So
Well,
I
you
don't know if I
better
want to go
fucking
quite
start
that far.
drinking some blood. Come on now. Okay, so we're going to introduce ourselves for our new listeners. I'm Keisha Holman Owens. I'm a business owner, and I'm also the host of the Libra Lounge with Keisha podcast.
And I'm Sean Skipworth. I'm a professor of government at College of the Mainland in Galveston County, and I'm a city councilman in Dickinson.
Dude, why did you have to say all of that? Because it makes me sound like a total loser over here.
You're not a loser.
Well, when you say you have like 5 things, 6 things behind your name, and I have like 2.
You're good at marketing. You just need to market it.
Whatever, you know how people are. They always try to he's a one-upper. That's what he is, a one-upper. So it is so funny because Sean and I became friends in a very, very weird way, because initially he was a guest on the Libra Lounge with Keisha podcast, and I hated him. He was running for a city council position against a person who used to be my friend. So I was just ready to totally hate this guy. I was even telling my husband, who produces the show, it's like, I don't fucking like this guy. Like, I didn't even look at his fucking page. Like, I'm not gonna like him. Like, I actually said, do I have to talk to him? And he's like, yes, you have to talk to him.
Didn't you invite me though?
I did, but I
was the thing
didn't.
here.
I didn't want to. Like, I invited you, hoping that you would kind of make yourself look stupid. That was the master plan.
Sorry.
But then, a week before the broadcasting of the show, I sent him a text message because it was the Game of Thrones final episode, and I was like, "Hey, do you happen to watch Game of Thrones?" And he's like, "Yes, I do." And I'm like, "Okay, give him a point." But then he got here, and he gave a great interview. He talked about politics. We talked about Game of Thrones. We talked about a whole bunch of other stuff. And from there, a friendship evolved. We're still friends, right?
We'll see how it goes at the end of this, yeah.
Okay. So basically, a rundown of the show is we're going to, he knows everything about politics. And, almost everything about politics. I know nothing about politics. So sometimes we do talk politics, but I talk it from a petty perspective, where he's got all the answers and all the real stuff. And I don't know, it's just like a nice little balance. So we decided to do a damn show. So here we go.
Here we are.
I
figured, I think there's, these people are doing these politics shows now and making a lot of money. So we should do one of these and get famous or something behind this.
Yeah, I don't care for famous. I just want the money.
Usually it's both. Unless you're
fine.
Infamous. Sometimes politicians become that, which you don't get paid for that. But
yes, you do. They want you to write a book.
True.
So, for our first show, we're just going to kind of wing it a little bit and see how it goes. But our first segment, every show, we will talk about current events. And it's really going to be Sean throwing out a topic, because I only know like pop culture stuff. And if you ask me, what celebrity news and gossip is going on, I can tell you that. But as far as like, is Donald Trump impeached? I don't know.
He is impeached now.
But it doesn't mean anything.
Well, let me ask you, what does that mean? Like, so if he's impeached, what do you think that means?
That means that there's been evidence against him, so he's not supposed to be president anymore to get him thrown off.
See, she knows. So it doesn't mean he's thrown out of office, right?
Right, because he's still in office.
I'd say there's a bunch of people that don't even
No,
understand that
no,
difference. That
no.
they think it means he's thrown out, right?
So
we're having the impeachment trial. is
Okay.
essentially what that.
And it's not
what we're
going
saying.
very well for us non-Trump people.
It's not going very well for us non-Trump people.
Yeah.
Well,
I've heard some of the witnesses that have gotten up were really, really bad.
Well, there haven't been any witnesses. That's been part of the thing.
I guess I read it wrong.
Well, I mean, so you're kind of right. You know, if you say the witnesses have gotten up, it's gone bad. Well,
Right.
there haven't been any witnesses, so I guess
Oh.
you'd be right in a way.
Okay,
right?
okay. All I know is that one person said, "Oh, Donald Trump got impeached," and like black people everywhere just started having like chicken fries and fish fries and stuff like that. And then I'm like, "But he's still in office. Black people, save your chicken money." You know, you're celebrating nothing as of right now. So I think a lot of people don't fully understand what impeachment means. So, Professor of Political Science,
Sure.
please educate us,
Sure. So,
but not in a boring way.
not in a boring way.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's been nice being
Good
here,
luck.
everybody. See you later. Basically, it's a two-step process, right? So the House of Representatives says, okay, there's been some accusations swirling, or there's been some shady stuff going on, maybe.
Right.
So they have an investigation, and that's what happened late last year. Was they had some committees that gathered, they pulled up evidence as much as they could, had some witnesses testify, and then they take it to a vote of the House. And if they say, okay, we think there's reason that maybe the president would be removed from office, then they vote, a majority vote gets it done, and it goes to the Senate where it is now. And then here it takes a 2/3 vote at this point to actually remove somebody from office.
Okay. How long is there like a limitation on how long the trial can go?
Oh, it could take forever. I mean, at this point, it's more about like strategy. You know, is it in someone's benefit to have the trial go on longer or shorter, and this sort of thing. So it's kind of jockeying at this point.
Right.
And there's a lot of interesting things about the specifics of the impeachment trial. Like for instance, there's 100 senators, right? And they all have to be there.
All 100.
Yeah, they require them to be there. Hypothetically, they could sort of drag them there if they didn't show up. Right?
Okay. Do you think all 100 are going to show up?
Oh, they've been there.
Okay.
I mean, literally, they could, like the Capitol Police, the marshals could go.
That's
find
what
them
they would have to do
and
to
say,
me.
like, show up.
Yeah.
So they have to be there. They have really strict rules for this. No cell phones.
Oh.
Our Senator John Cornyn, he apparently got in trouble. He was using a smartphone or a smartwatch, and someone, it was like, Senator, what are you doing with this watch? You know, you should.
But they didn't say you couldn't have a smartwatch. They say you can't have a cell phone.
I guess a gray area, right?
That's a very gray area.
It's a cell device, I suppose. Anyway,
but it's also a watch.
they can drink, I think it was milk and water. Coffee is not allowed.
Why?
So, we've had 3 presidential impeachments ever.
Wait. Let me see if I know who they are.
Yeah, we'll see if you can. Okay, yeah. What are the 3 presidents? I got to change my classroom material now because of this.
Okay,
but
is it 3 including Trump?
Let's start with this question: has a president ever been removed from office through impeachment?
Richard Nixon.
A often given answer,
James,
but wrong.
you're supposed to whisper the damn answer to me.
Didn't we say he wasn't gonna? I think you said, James, you can't talk during this.
He can't talk, but I can talk to him. Okay, so Richard Nixon was not impeached?
So I think that Richard Nixon, he was not. So remember what impeachment means, right? So first, impeachment means the House. So the first step, they say, we're basically formally charging you with some crime.
Okay.
Or some wrongdoing, because it does, whether it's a crime or not, it's a little debatable even.
Okay.
So we're accusing you of something, moving it to the Senate.
Okay.
That didn't even happen for Nixon.
Oh.
But Nixon resigned. So and he would have been impeached and probably removed, almost certainly.
Okay.
And that's really why he resigned, because he saw the writing on the wall, and he just kind of left.
It's time to bounce.
Yeah, you kind of look around. His last meal, I've seen the plate of it. It's this nice plated cottage cheese that they brought him, which apparently he ate often. It was like peaches and cottage cheese, and
he should have been impeached based just on that, because cottage cheese is disgusting.
You look at this sad little meal and you go, well, I'm going to eat this, and he got on the helicopter and did the 2-finger peace out, yo, and left.
So all this time I thought that he was voted out of office.
No, but it was a kind of,
okay,
let me take a plea bargain, Your Honor, and get out of here before it goes bad.
So who's the other one?
So there've been 3.
Okay.
3. So now, okay, so
No, I don't know.
so one of them I know that you know.
Okay,
Other
look,
than Trump, we just said that.
I'll tell
So
you
who are
the
other
presidents
two?
that I really know.
Okay.
Period. Out of like all of
Okay.
them. I know George Washington. I know Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter. Have you seen that movie?
I have.
How many times have you seen it?
Maybe probably once, maybe twice.
We
maybe
can't
once.
be friends after
Okay.
this. You have to see it at least 7 times for us to remain friends.
7 times.
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, Kennedy, Nixon, Reagan, Obama, Clinton, the Bushes, Trump,
Okay, well you said
Eisenhower.
you said one of them in that group.
One of those in that group
One of the
got
other ones
impeached?
that was impeached, yeah. I guarantee you know this, and if you don't think of it and I tell you, you're gonna say of course. Because it also
Was it
it's
Eisenhower?
juicy, right? It was scandalous.
Who?
Bill Clinton. See?
You
What did
know
I say?
what? But how old was I when that was going on? I don't think I even.
Probably late high school, right?
Yeah, I just remember the whole I did not have sexual relations with that woman. And you did.
And then later he did I did have a sexual relationship with that woman, and it was wrong, and I apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, look, Clinton can do no wrong.
He was
Okay.
he was impeached for, among other things, he was questioned under oath about that, and he said,
He
"No, I did
lied.
not," and so they charged him with perjury.
Okay.
But
But he did
was
not- he-
removed. of
Okay,
course.
okay. So I think that's the issue with most people is that they think that once you are impeached, you are going to be
Right.
removed.
Right.
Okay.
That's often what you're right.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
often when people get
misconception of it.
confused.
That's why, like I said, all the black people are like, oh, Trump's. I was like, no, my brothers and sisters. No. He has not been removed. Because they were like real confused, like, why?
And he's not going to be. I mean,
I don't think so either.
No, he's not. He's
Yeah.
not. What the other one is Andrew Johnson, who was the vice president after Lincoln.
And what did he do?
Well, he had a bunch of articles of impeachment against him.
Mm.
The main issue was, so after Lincoln, he was put on the ticket with Lincoln just because he was seen as kind of this more conservative guy in the end of the Civil War, and it would help him win. He probably didn't need him, but he was like a drunk. Actually, a funny story about him is that so Lincoln, of course, was assassinated. That's not a funny story. Too soon.
If you
too
watch
soon.
Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, you will get the full story.
Right.
Because he could have lived forever if he had just what was the guy's name, producer James, real quick? You don't remember the guy's name, the vampire? His friend who's offered to make him a vampire?
I don't remember the character's name, no. Stephen? John?
Look it up. I gotta know now. Google it. So he could have lived forever, but he decided, no, I'm gonna go to this theater show.
Because he's noble. Because he's
yeah.
That's why he's usually considered the best president, right?
Yes.
Anyway.
And because of the whole slavery thing.
Sure, right. In
Yeah,
the Civil War.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Civil War thing and the
Yeah,
slavery
it's pretty gosh darn important.
yeah.
Especially black people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So anyway, he was his vice president,
Uh-huh.
and there's actually a larger plot associated with the assassination plot of Lincoln. So of course, Lincoln, they succeeded. The Secretary of State was also wounded for like a year or something, and Andrew Johnson was
Wounded from what?
an assassin, was shot also.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And yeah, so there was actually this attempt. We're gonna kill the president. We're gonna kill the vice president. We're gonna kill Secretary of State, kind of all at once, right? So Andrew Johnson was supposed to also be killed, and an assassin was waiting for him at a place he was supposed to be. But Andrew Johnson is a drunk, and he was drunk, supposedly hung over and passed out in his hotel room, and he didn't come down. So I guess they say alcohol never done anything good for you.
Exactly.
It can save lives sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, as long as you're not driving.
He even reportedly showed up to the inauguration drunk. Back in those days, if you had like the flu or a cold or something,
You drank alcohol.
the doctor might say, well, have a little bit of, have some whiskey.
And he had a whole bunch?
He did not follow the instructions on the bottle. Just take liberally, right? So
remind you of anyone, James?
So there's some reports from back then that he was drunk, and when they swear in the vice president first, and that he actually took like the oath for president, and the chief justice had to correct him and say, no, you're vice president. Oh, right. And Lincoln was apparently mortified, and I can't believe how bad this guy is.
Right.
And then in 2 weeks he was dead, and the guy was president, right? So anyway, the Congress didn't really like him, and he would veto a lot of laws, and there were so many people opposed to him that the Congress was routinely just overriding the vetoes anyway. You need a 2/3 vote to do that.
He tried.
So actually, they passed a law that was later the court said was probably illegal. It was unconstitutional. So they passed this law. He
Mm.
vetoed it. They overrode it. Then he refused to follow it. And then they said, aha, you broke the law. So now we're going to throw you out of office.
Oh, wow.
But they even said stuff like he used like foul language or something while speaking in public. This
Wait,
this
you're not
laundry
supposed
list
to
of
do-
stuff.
What would they think about Trump? I mean, just, can you imagine?
Well, if you go by those standards, right, I suppose so.
Yeah.
But he survived by one vote. There's one senator
Mm.
short of actually kicking him out of office.
Okay, so
And-
yeah, he really got lucky.
But the guy, I think he said something like, oh, this has gone on far enough. I
Right.
mean, this is enough. So anyway, he was later vindicated on the specific issue that
Really?
yeah, the courts, they kind of said, well, you know, that law back then, yeah, it
Mhm.
was probably not okay. So yeah, we've had 3 that were impeached, but none have been removed. And that's not going to, I don't think that's about to change here in the next couple weeks.
Probably not.
either.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Because you teach political science on the college level,
Mhm.
correct? And also on the high school level.
Well, it's all college. It's just
Oh,
it's a
it's
dual
dual
credit
credit
class.
class,
We
okay.
teach the college class.
So basically, since this really seems like it's going to be you teaching me about government, political science, all that good stuff. So, do my parents have to cut you a check?
Do your tuition payment?
Tuition
Well,
payment?
I'm not part of an accredited university sitting here talking to you, so I don't think so. I think you're good.
Okay, so when we get back, we are going to talk about what was the word that what was it again?
I think term limits, right?
Yes, that. I'm sure I'm going to get that all wrong too. So we will be right back after this message. Sassy Class Boutique is the hot spot for your fashion, beauty, and home decor desires. We celebrate women of all shapes and sizes with our trendy collection of regular and plus-size clothing. Looking for the right accessories? We have upcycled Louis Vuitton handbags, vegan purses, and jewelry to add sass to your class. We also offer health and beauty products from salon quality hair care to cruelty-free makeup. Our edgy home decor items will make you the envy of all of your neighbors. Sassy Class Boutique also offers custom items like shirts, hats, and other gifts for any occasion. All of our vendors are female-owned small businesses, and together we are Sassy Class Boutique. Located at 3709 Fatter Drive in Dickinson, Texas, 77539. Or shop anytime with us at www.sassyclassboutique.com. Welcome back to Petty Politics with Sean Skipworth and Keisha Holman Owens. So, Sean, the other day you and I were kind of talking about topics for the show, and you had a really good one, but I was half-assed listening, so I can't remember what it was.
This is just like class. That's what you were saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling you're going to send a bill to my parents.
If I'm talking, you can just
kind of nod off over here.
kind of set your
But
head
see,
down.
I'm an
there.
adult. I'm a 40-year-old woman. I know how to fall asleep with my eyes wide open.
If you start to snore, we'll all kind of laugh at you a little bit, but
That could happen.
Otherwise,
That possibly could happen. So term limits.
Right.
Okay. So for me, I only know the term limits for like the president.
Mhm.
Nothing else.
That's how most people know of it.
Okay, but break it down for us.
So back there used to not be even for president term limits when
there was not.
No, there was kind of this unofficial rule that George Washington ran for 2 terms, and then he said,
That's enough.
Yeah, he kind of gave this, this kind of 2-term precedent that you don't want to be a king or something and be here forever, and so two terms is good, and so largely people after him honored that and didn't really run for or get elected to that until Franklin Roosevelt, and but he ended up doing 4 terms and he died in his 4th term in office. But with the Depression and World War II and stuff like that, when you have a crisis like that, there can be a real clamoring to keep. You want some continuity. You don't just want to change things up. And things were so bad, and he, there had been some improvement. He was generally liked, right, to where he got elected. People wanted him to be elected. But then after he was gone, people said, okay, maybe we should just make this official. And so the Constitution was amended, and they made it 2 terms. So that's how most people are familiar with it.
Okay.
But you do hear people talk about it a lot. It's a popular thing. Let me ask you, so are you pessimistic about the government, or do you have a lot of trust for the government? You think the government doing a good job?
I'm going to be honest with you. Before you pranced into our lives,
Man.
government wasn't like a hot topic with us. You know what I mean?
Well, but what were your thoughts if somebody asked you like, "Hey, do you like the government? It's doing a good job?"
I don't think that I know enough about
Mhm.
what's going on politically to even be
Mhm.
able to honestly answer that question.
That doesn't stop most people from talking about what they think about
It
politics.
usually doesn't stop
A,
me from
a
saying
lack
shit,
of
but
knowledge, trust me, that's no bar to people saying what they think.
right. I mean, you most definitely have opened my eyes to a lot, especially with small town
Mhm.
politics. I mean, I'm not a fan of Trump's.
Do you think people are, and it doesn't have to be Trump, I mean, do you
Right.
think people are pessimistic about government? Do you get that
Yes, I
sense?
think that they are.
Yeah, largely Americans are just kind of, I've made a joke about, well, if I want to be a big politician, I have to become a bloodsucking vampire at night.
Hmm.
That's sort of how we think about
Yeah,
things, right? Is
yeah.
that we say politicians are not to be trusted.
Most people do not
um,
trust politicians at all.
absolutely not.
That's the whole sleazy politician thing.
Correct.
You know?
Exactly. So term limits is something that comes about when people say, oh, we need to keep these people from being in office for too long. We need to clean people out and get rid of them. And
Right.
this becomes a thing that gets talked about a lot.
Mhm.
And it does make some sense, right? That you don't want to keep somebody in office forever. It's
Right.
hard to get people kicked out of office when they get elected. Take Congress, for example. There was some poll 2-3 years ago that went around. They asked people, what's your opinion of Congress?
Mhm.
And then they asked, like, what's your opinion of herpes, right? And so herpes was more popular than Congress, literally. Where people were like,
Yeah, it probably
herpes,
is,
not so
yeah.
bad. Congress, no, I'd rather have herpes, right, than think about Congress. So that gives you a sense of what's going on,
I
right?
can believe that, because people do not trust politicians.
But yet, in Congress, it's like a 75% reelection rate. So everybody says,
Really?
I hate these guys, they suck. And then they
But
say,
they keep them in.
we should elect them like a lot. So we
Right.
say it's the other, it's the other member of Congress, not
Right.
mine or whatever.
Yes, okay, I can see that. Well, I mean,
So you get this idea of term
yeah,
limits.
I remember having a conversation about, like local politics and
Right.
it kind of goes along with what you just said. You have groups of people who don't really like each other, but they won't get rid of the other one because they're just used to one another. It's like a dysfunctional family.
Right. And sometimes people, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's
Mhm.
take a local level, for instance,
Okay.
right? And I can kind of be judgy because I ran against somebody that was in office. I didn't wait for an open seat, right? But they'll say, oh, you can't beat someone in office. It's too hard, so I'm just not going to run.
Right.
But that again, that's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean,
Mhm.
I beat somebody.
Right.
And
And that hadn't happened in a while, right?
Or the mayor, the local mayor who's not running again for reelection,
Mhm.
she beat somebody when she first got elected. I mean, it
Okay,
can be
okay,
done. You can
okay.
beat people.
And
So
she was mayor for,
I think 15 years. this
so
year.
there's no term limit for the
Correct.
mayor in
Right.
small towns?
Well, okay, not here, no.
Okay.
So even in Texas, term limits are a pretty popular idea,
Mm-hmm.
but the state has never adopted them at the state level for
Okay.
anything, and local level, only like 25% of cities have adopted it.
Okay.
So and I'd even go back. You go way back to when the country was being founded. So all the old white dudes went to the Philadelphia in the schoolhouse, and
Mhm.
let's make the Constitution.
Right.
So and you get the impression today people really like the Constitution, like we like worship it. We put it up on walls and stuff.
No.
You live in Texas. You never noticed anybody really into the
Uh-uh.
Constitution?
You know what? I probably have been to people's houses and they've had the Constitution on the wall just to know what the fuck it was.
See, I'm going to look over
See?
at James. See, James knows what I'm talking about, right? That there's some people who it's like the Bible and the Constitution, right? Like,
Really?
they really, and I think they're proud of the Constitution, like what the country did, and it was a very novel government when we made it, and
Mhm.
those were some smart dudes, right?
Right.
That came up with this
Yeah.
stuff. But one of the things they did put in there was term limits, and there was a lot of debate about it.
Okay.
We forget that when the Constitution was adopted, people were actually really distrustful.
Mhm.
Here's actually how the Constitution was made. So after we got free from England, we passed this. We had this government called the Articles of Confederation,
Mhm.
and it was just basically all the powers with the states, pretty much, almost
Mhm.
entirely. But it didn't work well because there were certain centralized things we couldn't get done. Like states could have their own money,
Mhm.
for instance.
Mhm.
The government couldn't make them tax anybody. They could ask for money, and
Mhm.
as you might imagine, nobody ever gave anything. Right?
Right.
If the IRS said we're asking for donations,
Mhm.
Could you please donate? You'd be like, absolutely. How much do you need? No way.
No.
Nobody would do that. So there were problems. So it became clear.
You went wrong. We said IRS.
They didn't even have that back
Do
then, right?
anything.
Exactly. So they decided to make a new constitution. So they said, they just said, let's fix the articles. And they explicitly told this group of people that they had go to Philadelphia, don't make a new government. So as soon as these guys get in closed doors, they go, all right, we're going to have to get rid of this, right? This thing sucks. So, tear it up, throw it in the trash. So they met in secret. So you had a bunch of guys that broke the mandate that they were given, right? So it was kind of illegal. They told them, don't do this thing. And so then they did the thing. Then they met in secret. Then it was in secret. They said, we don't want too much public reaction, which I get. You need to have a certain amount of privacy so people can talk honestly and stuff like that. And so these old guys go out there, they meet in secret, break the law, and then bring it out. So yeah, people were like, what are you trying to pull here? So there was a lot of debate. Well, so there were the Federalists. They were for the Constitution, like your James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, who's like a distant relative of my family.
I only knew one name that you said.
Which one?
The first one.
Hamilton for the musical?
No.
You didn't know him?
Go. What was the first?
Madison?
Yes.
You didn't Hamilton even the musical?
No.
Okay.
No, just keep going.
He's the one that got shot in the duel.
I mean, I think you keep.
Okay, anyway.
You keep forgetting a couple of key factors here.
What we should do.
This should have been politics for idiots.
We need to do one of these. We need to do like a citizenship test, right? We'll have you do it. And then we'll do one later.
I would probably fail.
Oh,
I'm not going to, bitch, you got to go all the way back to Africa.
Everybody.
Yeah, like deported,
Everybody does. Everybody fails those.
Yes.
Anyway, so what I was getting at with the term limits was that they weren't in there, and the people opposed to the Constitution. They wrote stuff in papers and said, we don't like the Constitution. And they wanted term limits. But one of the things they said they didn't want them was in local government. They explicitly said not local government.
Really? Well, why?
Well, there's a couple issues with term limits, and it comes up more in local government too, I think. One, they thought it's a smaller government, so you can kind of keep more tabs on them and you have more control right over them.
Okay.
But term limits kind of make sense in that, it'll clean people out of office, and that's a good thing. But you find
yes, it is.
But you find a couple things that happen, though. Is it that we want people out of office, or do we want them to be accountable?
I would think you just want them to be more accountable.
Right. Because you could have unaccountable people and throw them out of office. Right. And then replace them with other unaccountable people.
Exactly.
So how do we hold politicians accountable? There's like really one way we do it.
And
what happens if politicians don't do what we want? What do you do?
Impeachment?
We throw them out of office in terms of like the election, right?
Right. Yes.
So if you do a bad job, you don't get reelected.
Right.
That's kind of the basis of this whole thing, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, what you find when you have term limits, remember earlier how I said people are scared to run against people in office and they don't. Well, what you actually tend to find is that there are fewer competitive elections.
Okay.
So since people know that, eventually they won't be able to run for reelection again, they just don't run and they wait.
Okay.
So then the whole time they're in office, nobody runs against them. So they don't fear reelection.
Right.
And they know they'll eventually, their carriage is going to turn back to a pumpkin, right? And they're going to have to go back. So then they're not really very accountable.
I like that analogy.
Thank you.
I like that a lot.
So they're not accountable and they do what they want.
So I think it's fair to go ahead and let our listeners know that you are running for. I made a mistake. I called myself.
Is that the mistake you made? You'd say the other way.
No,
and then you'd say, I meant you.
No.
But,
we are running for mayor, correct?
James, is that correct?
Well, I believe Sean is running.
I don't believe it's a co-position, is it? I don't remember the charter.
I think our town charter says one person
one individual
who can be mayor.
No, I haven't seen that. No, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the case.
So
basically, we have someone running for mayor and an incredible clinger on that won't let go, like a political leech that's just attached and will not let go until they're filled with blood.
So like I was saying, we're running for mayor, and I'm so excited about this election, but no, I really am excited that Sean is running for mayor, which is part of the reason. I mean, look, if he could sit here and do a podcast with my dumb ass about politics, I think he could be mayor of Dickinson.
The sad part is she doesn't even live in the city limit. I can't even get a vote.
I can't even vote.
She's original Dickinson back in the day, but can't even vote.
Everything about my husband and I is Dickinson except for our home address. I mean, the kid goes to school in Dickinson, and it sucks because one time...
You own a business in Dickinson?
We own two in Dickinson.
I mean, we're sitting in Dickinson right now doing this.
It was so funny because whenever you were running for city council, I had gotten on Facebook, and there was a conversation about all this stuff, and I'm just going to give myself a little bit of credit. I replied, and it was almost like I didn't even write it. It was so good. And the woman goes, she even live in Dickinson?
I remember that.
Oh, ma'am, what you don't ever do is question for Keisha Holman Owens. Right, James? He's shaking his head, yeah. Like, hell yeah. But no, I don't. But that doesn't mean that I can't stand behind a candidate, right?
No. You absolutely can. I mean, and I think you own a business in the town, so you're literally a taxpayer in the town contributing to the finances, and we need to attract. We need to attract more business, and I don't really care if I think it'd be great if all the business owners lived in Dickinson, but that's not a requirement. Your money's it's not funny money, right? It spends.
It works. Yes.
Yeah. So we can the next pothole we fix, we'll call it the Sassy Class Boutique pothole.
Look, no, don't
pothole. No, it'll be the filled pothole brought to you by Sassy Class Boutique.
I'm okay with that.
Your tax dollars.
But something I think you need to name a street or something after.
We'll fill it with pink. It'll be a pink filled pothole. There you go.
My dog. That's my dog. See, this is why he needs to be the next mayor.
We're talking about term limits, I think.
I know, right? But you know me, I'm a baby squirrel. I just will bounce around and all that stuff. So basically, if you don't understand about term limits by now, that's just too late. You're going to have to go watch those. What was the shows, the Conjunction Junction? What's your function? What were they called?
Just a bill on Capitol Hill.
Yes, go watch those.
I got something else to add, though.
Go watch those because I need to go rewatch them. Actually, okay, Mayor, no, John, James. I'm just throwing out men's names.
They were J's.
Joaquin. What else can I call you? George with a J. Go ahead.
Jetson.
No, I'm just holding my mic. I'm not talking.
Put the mic down. When you put the mic up, we think you have something to say.
Well, just in case.
I might need to jump in here.
This is why we're running for mayor. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit. Did we cover everything?
No, we did not cover everything.
Oh, we didn't? Well, you talked a lot for not to have covered the topic.
Well, but then you went into a promotion for the campaign.
Which it was for me, so I kind of appreciate, it wasn't like I personally take offense at that. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got 20 seconds.
20 seconds, man.
To tell them exactly what term limits are.
Well, just remember, Keisha, this is a show, not a commercial.
Right.
Just remember that.
I just feel like I'm in the middle of two men who are both in a way trying to tell me what to do, and that could be disastrous. And he puts down his mic.
So term limits. So, yeah. Term limits I think they often come off as something that sounds like a good idea because it, helps to clean out government, keep people that you don't like from being there too long. But there's several things to consider that the Founding Fathers talked about, right? That, one of those is that it can be a double-edged sword. So what if you like somebody in office? Well, then they're gone because they can't stay in anymore. That's a disadvantage. They can also be kind of lazy, I think, because part of it is that you're saying to yourself, I don't like what's going on in the government and everybody's unhappy, but gosh, we just really don't care enough to run, to get somebody to do anything about it.
Right.
So we'll just wait till the term limits come in and then we'll deal with it.
Right.
And the other thing that happens is, and this is from someone who's from a small town that I see this, we had term limits in our town. And what happens is, first of all, you get like 10% turnout in the local elections. Nobody goes, right? And then, so what happens is the groups of elites, they just kind of say, all right, whose turn is it now? And they just horse trade.
Yeah.
So what those term limits do a lot of times is they just kind of keep those little groups kind of in power, and they prevent anybody that's not in those from getting in there too much, and it causes a problem. I think what you really want to do, especially in local elections, that 10% turnout thing I just talked about, that's the problem, right? You got 10% of people, then you're having a very small group make all the decisions.
Right.
You got to, you got to have these elections when people show up. So turnout's bad everywhere, but go to like a presidential election, so those November elections, right? You might get 60% turnout.
Right.
So you're talking, 1,000 people, versus thousands of people. And so you're going to make those local politicians, when they go out, they got to talk to a lot more people. They got to involve more people and make them aware. And there's more accountability there. And so in Dickinson, we do ours in May, like a lot of local governments, but nobody shows up. Some people say, well, if we did them in the fall, we'll get lost in all the federal election stuff. Well, we're already lost if only 10% of people are showing up to the election. So I think term limits are really well intentioned, but if you really want to hold people accountable, because that's the key, you got to have the elections when people show up and get more interest. So, yeah.
In other words, vote for Sean Skipworth for mayor of Dickinson 2020. All right, so when we get back...
Is this an infomercial?
It kind of looks like it a little bit. We need maybe a couple of things of dryer sheets that we're trying to sell and maybe your picture in the background, something like that. So when we get back, I get to pick the topic. So
all right,
let's have fun with that. We'll be right back. Alrighty, welcome back to the show. So the other day when we were kind of getting things together for our very first podcast, of course, Sean had all these amazing political topics.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I could throw in there was, hey, have you seen that new Aaron Hernandez documentary on Netflix?
And I haven't. So, I'm not, I know.
You act like you're, work and you're a husband and a father and you're involved in your community or something.
Sorry.
Jeez. Okay, so everyone else in the world who's already seen this documentary, but you know all about the story, though.
Oh, sure.
So, even on my podcast and on my blog, we've been talking about the whole Aaron Hernandez thing. But when Sean and I were talking about it, I was like, you know what? I think there was a part of it that was political. So, as you guys know, Aaron Hernandez, who was a I didn't even know this until I watched the documentary, a really good football player. I only knew of him during his murder trial. So as everyone know, he was accused and convicted of killing Odin Lloyd, who was the boyfriend of Aaron's fiance. It was her sister. So anyway, he was convicted of that crime. Then he also had to stand trial for a double homicide. And he was not, I forget what the lawyer's name was, but he had Casey Anthony's lawyer. So he was not convicted of those two crimes. But while he was in jail, I guess he had time to really be studying up on laws and things like that. And there is a law, what is it called?
Abatement.
Oh, man. How did I say albeit? It's abatement?
Abatement.
Abatement?
Yep. One word. Yep. Abatement.
Okay, well, I'm probably not going to pronounce it right, so I'm going to let him say it every single time.
The A word.
That A word, yeah. So he was appealing the first conviction. But he found this law and it's abatement. Is that right? Is that it? I said it right?
You got
it. Which states that if a person has been convicted of a crime and if they appeal it, if they die during that appeal, that conviction is overturned.
Yes.
Which was the case with Aaron Hernandez. He appealed the conviction for the murder of Odin and he hung himself during that appeal, hoping... I think this is his entire goal.
It's a reasonable guess.
Yeah.
Reasonable guess.
It was so that the NFL would have to pay him the money that they owed him. Now, since he was a convicted murderer, they did not have to. I don't know. I pay out his contract or something like that.
He had gone to arbitration at one point with the NFL, and they said no, we're not going to pay this contract out.
Right. So he was pretty smart because he wanted his fiance and his daughter to.
Well, as smart as a murderer who then commits suicide is in the first place, but sure.
Yeah. I think this was. I'll say this: if he had been as smart as he was when he thought about this law, when he did the first murder, he probably wouldn't have gotten convicted in the first place.
Sitting in prison, it all looks a little different on the other side.
Man, because I tell you what, a 3-year-old could have done a better job of murdering someone than Aaron Hernandez.
I'm a rich NFL player with a pretty good future. Let me go
fuck it up in every way possible.
Let me go act like a moron and murder people and get.
And they still don't know why he did it. But let me just real briefly tell you just how bad of a job he did. Number one, he texts the guy, hey, are we still hanging out? So you got that. They were together.
Were you ready to do the murder? No.
Pretty much. So then he goes and he rents a vehicle. Guess who he rented it under? Aaron Hernandez.
I guess my own name, right?
Yes.
Yeah, why not?
So then he's also seen at a convenience store buying blue bubble gum. Guess what was found at the scene of the crime?
Red bubble gum?
Yes,
yes. No.
So he shoots this guy. He leaves tire marks. He leaves his tennis shoe marks. And there's bubble gum on, around the body. Okay. Then he himself.
Does that leave DNA on bubble gum? I don't remember.
Yes, of course it does.
I think maybe
just
so.
A tad bit.
A little bit.
So then when he returns the rental, guess what he offers the lady who works at the rental company?
Clean it out or what?
Blue bubble gum.
Blue bubble gum.
Yes.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna say, can you clean the blood off the front
right,
of the car? I might have hit a deer.
He probably should have. That is just how bad it was. So when they go to clean out the rental, guess what's inside the rental? Gun casings. Right. And guess what else?
Blood.
Blue bubble gum.
Blue bubble gum.
Yeah. So it was just like, were you trying to get caught?
No, I mean, he needs to watch more CSI or
CSI, Law and Order.
It's only on 80,000 times a day, right?
Yes. Law and Order SUV has been on for like 35 years.
Law and Order, the SUV.
That's I know, right? So yeah, he was not a very good, smart murderer at all. So, once this happened, the family of Odin, and I would have done the same thing, they fought to have that law changed.
Right.
So what is it called when you try to get a law changed?
I think it's called try to get a law changed.
It doesn't have like a cute name?
I mean, you might say you're lobbying or you're advocating. I mean, but they just wanted a law change.
Right. And I would have done the same exact thing if it were me, because it has to be pretty heartbreaking. You find the person who killed your kid and that person's sitting in prison for the crime. And even though, he's dead, it's just like, I don't want this to happen to another family. So the law was actually overturned. James, I need you to fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure, it got changed. So then he has to go back.
It's kind of a slap in the face if, due to technicality, you die while appealing. Though convicted, you get even on paper. Right. They say, well, we're going to take out the conviction. Yeah. No, you want that.
No,
you want it to go down in the books as a conviction. No,
and you want that. You need that closure emotionally. Right. But yes, his mom did lobby for that to be changed, and it was granted. So that is what I know about politics.
Well,
that is what I have to offer you guys.
Well, don't sell yourself short. Okay. But you see a lot of those kind of true crime things. There's always stuff that comes up about civil liberties or things like this. Right before the show, when we were talking about this, I mentioned that if you see Mindhunter, that Netflix show where they talk about the founding of the behavioral science unit at the FBI that goes after serial killers. It's a good show if you haven't seen it.
I'm surprised I haven't seen it because I love, what do you call it, James? We call it murder porn.
Murder porn.
Murder porn. I love porn.
So it's a drama. It's a drama, but it's kind of loosely based on the founding of that unit. Anyway, so the 60s, 70s, kind of like the dawn of the serial killer, right? When all this stuff, Ted Bundy and the Zodiac killer and all this. Right. Well, some of these serial killers, they go to prison, and like you say, you're sitting around and. For some of them, like John Wayne Gacy or somebody, you're not getting out of prison on a technical. Yeah. There's none of that. They're going to find a way. They're going to bury you under the jail.
Right.
I mean, so appeals are kind of worthless. So what do I do? Well, how can I get rich off of this crap that I did? So they would write a book, and I'm going to talk about murder and publish the book.
Right.
Okay, except. So, and now in America, I know we say America is the place you get paid, but you're going to go out and be a heinous killer, a child killer, killing dozens of people, and then write a book and get rich off of it. Not that you can do a lot with that money in prison, but it's kind of disgusting. It is disgusting. You can do that. So some laws were passed that said, no, you cannot, if you're convicted like this, you cannot go and profit off of it.
There goes my dream of being a murderer and then being a New York best.
Can we move this over here? The sound.
All my hopes and dreams are going up in flames right now because, and I get it.
I just want to say I cannot help who endorses me for office. I have no control.
Because she's better than me. Because I don't know her not even a little bit.
Well, you remember the O.J. Simpson thing a few years ago? So he was, he's innocent.
Right.
He didn't do it. So when he was in prison, there was that book that was floated called If I Did It.
Right.
Now, that's what innocent people tend to do. They say, well, let's write a book about hypothetically how I committed a murder that I did not commit if I did it. Well, it's not against the law by any of those statutes because he was not convicted, right?
Right.
But couple things happened with that one. The publisher got a lot of heat. That this, this is
it's tacky and it's rude and
right and
insensitive to the family.
And he did it. We all know he did.
Yes.
So they said, okay, I don't know how comfortable we feel. But also he got sued after he was acquitted, and that's actually part that kind of led him to end up in prison, if you remember, because he got, he spent all this money with Johnny Cochran and the Dream Team and all these people, and he bought his freedom basically. Aaron Hernandez was an O.J. Simpson good in the NFL, right. O.J. Simpson rich, right?
Right.
So Johnny Cochran unfortunately had died for Aaron Hernandez, so I guess he couldn't, he couldn't Ouija board him from the grave, right. to make a defense.
Yep.
So he was sued after, and the family got a big judgment against him because a civil suit, you don't need as high a bar of evidence. And so, he had to pay all this money. So he's dead broke. Right. So remember, he was basically got convicted, breaking a hotel room, beating somebody up, stealing back crap that he had to sell.
Yeah.
That he said was still his, even though he'd sold it.
Right.
And so he goes to prison, and they gave him a maximum sentence. I actually got a question for you about that in a second.
Okay.
But let me finish this kind of line of thought here. So, he ends up in prison, and when he was going to write this book, I think there had been talk that if he did make any money, that basically the court was going to seize it and give it to their family because he still owes them money. He has nothing else to give them.
Right.
So that stuff comes up a lot. But let me ask you something about the O.J. Simpson thing. Right? Okay. So when you get arrested, hypothetically in America, you're supposed to get a fair and impartial trial and all this kind of thing.
Okay.
So O.J. Simpson gets found not guilty of murder, and then later he gets arrested and convicted of this other crime. So now it comes time to sentence him. Right? Okay. So on paper, I think he'd been in trouble for something else before, but he didn't have like a serious conviction before. So, I think the term for that crime was like, probation to 14 years in prison. Okay. So the jury gave him 14 years in prison, the maximum sentence. You say, of course. Why? Why did they give? I mean, it's kind of obvious, but why?
For one thing, for me, just damn dumb. You know what I mean? And I think it's because the jurors know he really did commit these murders.
So here's the kind of a justice question, right?
Yeah.
So the jury is saying, hey, this guy got away with murder. I'm going to nail him for this.
Stick it to him.
But, from a legal perspective, and I've heard some lawyers argue this at the time, was that a fair sentence? Because the jury, from a legal standpoint, morally, that's a different question.
Right.
Unfortunately, the law and morals don't always the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But legally, is that a fair thing to do? I think you can make a case that it wasn't, right? That they were considering, they were considering other factors.
They were.
In fact, he was not found guilty of that,
right?
Even though he did it.
But then, what can you do about that? Because it was the crime of the century. Everyone knows about that story.
Of course, I mean, to truly get an impartial jury, I don't know how you.
You would have to go to some like where monks are and get them to be the jurors on.
I remember we joked. I mean, my grandmother. We were talking about it back when in the '90s in middle school, because even kids, you were saying, I don't pay attention to politics. Oh, everybody.
We pay attention to that, yeah.
We were saying you're going to find some guy in the backwoods going, is the Civil War over? Did the Federals win yet? Or did we rise again? And that kind of thing. You have to find somebody who has no idea about anything.
That was just too, that's a hard one, because you know what? If I were a juror for that trial, I'd be like, you know what? You stupid motherfucker. You couldn't just say, I got away with double murder. Let me take what I do have, move to another country, and lay low.
They probably wouldn't take him.
That's true. Well, and I've said this more than a few times. Him and George Zimmerman are two of the dumbest criminals ever.
Oh, that reminds. So I sent you, I think, a link to something the other night. So about O.J. Simpson, I didn't even think about that.
Did you?
Yeah. So you don't read this stuff, right? So
I don't be reading half the shit you send me, Sean.
So he, I don't remember what casino it was that he did this stuff at. Anyway,
somewhere in Vegas.
It was in Vegas. I don't remember the exact property, but anyway, he is suing them for defamation of character, saying various things.
Oh, I remember.
And the hotel's defense is great. They basically, their attorneys responded and said, well, his reputation is already so ruined, we can't defame him.
I agree. Like
there's no reputation
to
defame.
All. Yes.
That's really
true.
That's really the best.
Yes.
Those are some good lawyers right there.
Yes,
right?
Very, very smart, because they're absolutely right.
He's pawn scum. What else could we say about him, right?
Along since we're talking about OJ and Aaron, are you just holding up the mic because that's
a pretty good one, James? I'm sure.
No, that's really good, man. That's almost like calling a Nazi a Nazi.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
There's nothing worse.
A Nazi
than
says
being
you're
called.
defaming me. You're a
You're
Nazi.
a Nazi.
What else
Yes.
could I say?
You
Well,
walk around
you know,
defamed.
I wonder, I'm surprised actually, and now that I'm thinking about it, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually started saying this. You know, part of the Aaron Hernandez documentary, they did a study on CTE, which well,
the chronic head injury.
Yes, and football players. Who was the first guy? It was Junior
Seau.
Junior
Yes.
Seau.
So they did a comparison of his brain, a normal brain, and his, and he most definitely did suffer from CTE. And he killed himself, but he shot himself in the chest just so they could study his brain. So check this out. They did Aaron Hernandez's brain. Oh my God.
Yeah, I've heard that.
He had half a fucking brain. You know what I mean? It was sad. So I'm surprised O.J. Simpson has not tried to say, you know what, guys, all of this happened because I suffer from CTE, and when I die, you guys are gonna know.
You know, I haven't really considered that before, but you're right. I'm surprised.
I mean, it's it affects your.
Unfortunately, to test you for it, you have to be
dead.
They have to take
and
out
OJ
your brain.
doesn't want to die. Time soon.
Clearly not.
Well, here's the big difference is that OJ was doing shit that was just dumb. It wasn't like crazy, weird, erratic.
This was like the culmination of domestic abuse.
Exactly.
I mean,
Whereas with Aaron Hernandez, he was just doing, like, one guy spilled a drink on him at a club.
And he just
That's what
flips
I'm
out.
saying.
I mean, but he walks home, he takes a picture with someone in the club. He's got plenty of time to think about it. They leave, and he shoots two people.
OJ clearly tried to cover it up.
Oh, yes, he did. I will never forget when he's trying to squeeze his big old football playing hand in that glove. If it doesn't fit, you must quit. You know, I don't think O.J. Simpson suffers from CTE.
No, I don't think like Aaron Hernandez or Junior Seau or even years and years ago before they started studying it, Lyle Alzado, you know, guys that died just went crazy and died.
Right.
Some WWE wrestlers have also.
Right. Chris Benoit.
Yeah, that was terrible.
So it's a real thing, and some people's like, oh, that's just an excuse. You know what? No, that is a medical thing, you know?
I actually suspect that O.J. Simpson probably does have CTE.
Probably. But he's got a lot of stupid going on, too.
To the extent that excuses any of this, I don't think so.
You want to bet money he's going to try to?
He might. It wouldn't. I'm surprised he hasn't.
I bet you Starbucks for a week he does.
I'm not going to take that bet because I agree with you. I think he might do it.
So then, basically, you're agreeing with me. So you owe me Starbucks for a week.
Just because you make a bet doesn't mean I have.
So here's so let me ask a question, you guys.
Just for changing the subject.
Well, so if evidence keeps mounting that CTE is absolutely real and absolutely does cause erratic behavior, things like that, do you think that there'll be a point when either legally or by public policy they'll start letting that be either not an excuse but a defensible position to lighten sentences or to hold other entities accountable for the actions of others?
I thought you were going to say that they're going to like ban football or something. The NFL spending way too much money to prevent that.
That's never going to happen.
Well, I'd kind of say that I think probably to the extent that mental illness and things in some circumstances can already be used to like mitigate stuff. I think it would just be accepted, you know, along with other diagnoses like that. So I don't think it would become a get out of jail free card or something, but you might get cases where it's seen as a mitigating factor or something like that, where your sentence might be lighter, or maybe they commit you to treatment if they ever determine a treatment for it or something.
Right.
But I mean, if you like a Chris Benoit thing, what did he kill his family and himself,
his wife, and then himself?
I think if you're saying I committed multiple murders and it was CTE, I'm sorry, man. Maybe that contributed, but. Yeah, we can't really have you around, you know.
and it was a concern because they actually had one former football player. He played in the NFL for 1 year, and I think it might have been around the time that Junior committed suicide. And this guy was like, you know what?
He retired at like
I'm done. He's like, I don't even want to take that chance.
Yeah.
And with Aaron Hernandez, his CTE was like the most advanced for his age at the
he even in his 30s? I don't think he was.
No. And he started playing football when he was like junior high, and he was a really good high school football player. Then he went on to play football in college. So that's a lot of head hits.
And I think legally that's going to kind of really be I like football a lot. I like to watch football just for the game itself.
I like to watch football players from the back
in the locker room. Is that
with no towel wrapped around them? That's what I
to each their own. But I think that's going to be something that the league is trying to do things with rules and things to make it safer.
Right.
And I think over time they're going to have to demonstrate that rule changes and equipment changes are making an impact, or it is going to become kind of a moral question. But also the product will just get a little worse because fewer people are going to have their kids do it. And that in and of itself may cause a problem. But at some point legally, it becomes a thing where I could see Congress saying like, hey, there's a sport where basically it's like, there's a sport where we know people doing it are, causing serious mental damage to themselves. And we know it isn't safe and we allow it to go on. And just because you agree to do it doesn't necessarily mean that the government should be allowing it to happen.
I don't think in our lifetime that would ever happen. It's just too much money.
I think, in the short term it's lobbying, but I think also you don't want to be super hasty and say, is there a way we can mitigate some of this stuff? But they're going to have to find a better test for it, because the fact you can only test you when you're dead, that's presenting a huge problem to really deal with it and try to understand it better. So but it's a sad deal. But the CTE, I think that's part of it, but at the same time,
OJ's just dumb. All right, so when we get back, what is the name of our last segment? Did we ever create a name for it?
Gerrymandering.
I can't say that word. I can't say words that have too many ers in it.
Ers?
Yeah, too many R's. Okay, let me say it. What is it called again? Gerrymandering?
Gerrymandering. You said it.
I said it with you, though. I can't say it by myself.
All right.
Okay. Gerrymandering.
Bam.
When we get back, we're going to talk about gerrymandering. We want to thank you guys for tuning in to our very first podcast of Petty Politics. Make sure, if you're on Facebook, to follow. It's follow on Instagram and like on Facebook, right?
Yes.
Okay, so make sure to like at Sean for...
No.
Oh, wait, hold on. At Sean Skipworth.
No.
Here's a thought. Let's let Sean promote his own stuff.
I want to promote it. Whisper it to me. At Sean... No, at Skip 4 Dickinson.
There you go.
Again, because I said it wrong so many times, it's at Skipworth for... No. At what?
At Skip 4.
This has just become B-roll. This has just become outtake roll.
I'm gonna get it right. It is. Make sure you go and follow at Skip 4 Dickinson. Is that right?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So also make sure you're following the Libra Lounge with Keisha on Facebook, Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to us on iTunes, and you can also listen and watch the show at, what is it, James? The Laughable app, TuneIn app, and iHeartRadio.
And support us on Patreon.
He always throws that in there. Support us on Patreon.
That's as a good promoter should do.
I guess so.
You need the money.
Because I'm a broke bitch. Okay, so what is this topic called? Gerrymandering?
You said it wrong on purpose.
No, I swear,
You did. Just admit it.
James, you're my husband. Did I say that on purpose wrong?
I'm just the producer.
No, just you're the husband. Did I say it? Did I purposely say it wrong?
You didn't purposely say it wrong. You're just...
I really mess up words that often.
You're close. Gerrymandering.
Gerrymandering.
Yes.
All right. I don't know what that means. So Sean's going to tell us exactly what it means.
First, tell us.
All right. So gerrymandering, it's like cheating, basically. So what do we mean by that?
My interest has been piqued.
There you go. Oh, cheating. How do you do that? Sorry, not that kind of cheating. And James is sitting right here too, isn't he? Okay. Well, that's for another show that I'm not a part of. So
this would be a solo show.
Right. So basically, and if you go back to your Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill, all that kind of stuff. We have Congress, these people that make the laws, and there's the House and the Senate. So the Senate that's doing this impeachment trial right now, there's 100 senators, so that's 2 per state. Okay. Doesn't matter if it's Rhode Island or Alaska, or if it's got 500,000 people or millions, you get 2 senators.
2, okay.
But the House of Representatives, they take 435 members and they divide it up.
Okay.
And so the states that have more population, they get more representatives from that state.
Okay.
So you take a state, like say a state gets 10 representatives. They got to take that state and divide it up into 10 little districts. So if you look at like a map where there's counties, and they're just seem sometimes to be like arbitrarily drawn or little rectangles, they got to make like a separate map of the state to say, all right, you live in the 1st district.
Okay.
Or you live in the 2nd district. And so you elect somebody from there to be your representative. Okay.
Okay.
So pretty simple there. So the question becomes, how do you draw these districts fairly, right? So they should probably have about the same population.
Okay.
So back, the old 3/5 compromise about slavery, right? So where when they would count the states to see how many people they had, even though slaves could not vote, they said they counted as 3/5 of a person.
Okay.
So and this is kind of a way of cheating back then too. Number one, it's messed up that you're treating human beings this way. Don't let them vote. And then, to add insult to injury, you let them count towards your state's power to contribute to the laws, right? So what could happen? You could have say you had a district where you had a bunch of slaves in it, like tons of slaves, and you had some landowners, right?
Did you just say picture this or imagine this?
Picture this.
I can't picture slaves.
I'm sure you could picture.
I cannot. It hurts.
What is that?
I can't do it.
Okay, well, imagine in a hypothetical way.
Just
what you got to say?
Just think of me as a black dude.
Oh, I got it. Okay. Slaves. Go ahead.
That worked that out for you. Okay. So, imagine basically what they're doing is they're manipulating stuff to where you've got, you could have, thousands of slaves in a district and then a few people who are allowed to vote. And then you could have another district with just people allowed to vote. And then you really have very few people that are actually, so you might have a fraction of people that can actually vote, but they're getting counted just as much as the place where they can't.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be fair if the populations aren't the same.
Right.
So we don't have that anymore. So
thank God, let freedom ring.
With slavery, exactly. So what you want to do is have the population be the same.
Okay.
Shouldn't have 10,000 people in one district and 1 million in another.
Right.
But then it's like the shape of the district, right? So the cohesiveness of it. So what that means, it should be kind of as compact as possible.
Okay.
So like in Houston, you're going to have really, these little small districts because everybody lives close together.
Right.
But like in North Texas, you're going to have really large districts because there's like more cows than people up there.
Okay.
And so you got to cast a wide net to get people, right?
Did you say a white net?
A wide net.
You got to be careful how you say stuff. Just saying. These are trying times. Right. Trump is president.
A wide net. I'm not even touching that.
Man.
Okay, so you got to cast a wide
yes.
net.
There you go.
But what can happen is there's certain things about generalities. Nothing, it's not true all the time about how people vote and where they live.
Okay.
So in like cities, what do you think people tend to vote, Republican or Democratic in like urban areas?
Democratic.
Yes. And then rural areas tend to be more Republican. Suburbs, it can vary. Tends to be more conservative, but that's not always true. So what starts to happen is the politicians who draw these maps, which I think the question becomes, I usually ask it like this in class. What group should be the least? What group would it be least appropriate to have draw the maps for their districts? Like in the government. So who would be would it be least appropriate to let decide?
Republicans?
No.
Oh, well, I don't know.
Just whoever is doing it. So if I'm the one getting elected from the district, I get to decide what my district is.
Okay.
Like. And of course, that's pretty much how we do it.
Okay.
So generally in states, the state legislatures that make the laws for the state, they get to draw the maps.
Okay.
Well, they're all Republicans or Democrats. And so, of course, they're biased.
How they want.
And so they're going to draw it in a way to help their party. So you're going to have situations where you're drawing a district in Houston. Well, where do you decide to draw the line? And they say, well, let's draw the line where there's more Republicans or Democrats to help our party. Okay. So you get some districts that don't make a lot of sense. In Texas, the poster child for that, I don't remember the name of the district, but it's a district that is part of South Austin. It goes down 35 through San Marcos and then all the way to North San Antonio. And the reason for that is what all those people have in common is a community. They don't really know, right? They live on I-35, I guess, over like 100 miles. But
which makes no sense at all.
But it's done because there's a lot. So Republicans control the state legislature. So I'm not dumping on Republicans or Democrats specifically. But in Texas, Republicans get to draw the maps. So they're going to rig the map to help themselves.
In their favor.
So what they're doing is they're cramming a bunch of Democrats into that district so that they can't vote in other elections.
Okay.
So they almost look at it like this is some kind of tumor and we're going to cordon it off. So those votes can't help other places.
Okay.
This started with racially. So after the Civil War, the Constitution, you saying God bless Abraham Lincoln, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things he certainly wanted was we got to let, we're going to have to let everybody vote. Well, they said black males got to vote. Sorry. Even then, they were still kind of sticking it to you, right? Yeah. Not women. Whoa.
Not black
we'll
women.
let the slaves vote.
Not black women, folks.
The male ones. Well, not even white women. That was they didn't even
it's
let
hard
them vote, right?
being a black woman in this world, okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, a lot of the women were upset about that. A lot of them were abolitionists back in the day. Mm-hmm. And then when they finally get rid of slavery, they give the right to vote. They're like, no, we don't see any similarities between not letting blacks vote and women.
And women, right.
That's really similar, actually.
Yes, it is.
Okay, anyway. But these southern states, they didn't want to follow these rules. But they already tried to have a civil war and not have to do it, and that didn't work. So you kind of had no choice. So they started playing these games. You heard of the grandfather clause before?
Mm-hmm. No, I haven't.
You haven't?
No.
So they would say, well...
Is it like your grandfathered into something?
They would say, if your grandfather was eligible to vote before 1865, which was the end of the Civil War, then you're eligible to vote.
But that doesn't
Well, of course, if
I
was a slave that had just gotten the right to vote, a former slave that got the right to vote, that's not me.
Not because your grandfather was still a slave and couldn't vote.
Right. So so then the Supreme Court said, okay, we see what you're trying to do there. No, you can't do that. So then they said, well, these former slaves, these black people are really poor. So let's put a poll tax so that they can't afford to pay. Okay. So then the court said you can't do that. Interestingly, though, since there's a lot more white people than black people, that actually kept more poor whites from voting than blacks.
Because they couldn't afford it either.
So nobody ever said racists were necessarily the smartest people in the world, but it's just, you realize you're keeping more whites from voting than blacks.
Right.
Really? Oh, well.
We didn't think about that.
Well, they're poor, so we don't really like them much
either.
We like
poor.
We like them a little more than you.
Right.
Blacks, but not a lot more.
But not a lot more. I mean, you're still closer to being a black slave.
They're still dead broke. So anyway, so then the court would say you can't do that. Mm-hmm. So what eventually you say to yourself, I know, the courts say we have to let them vote. Right. We'll let them vote, but we're going to just cheat. So we're going to take a black area, a black neighborhood, and we're just going to chop it up so they don't vote as a group together, so they can't get the candidates they want. God forbid a black candidate elected to office. Right. So they did that. In this way, they could say, we are giving you the right to vote.
Right. But we're still manipulating the system that...
Yeah, it's like saying you can play in a rigged casino game. Like, you can play this game...
You can still play it, but it's still going to be rigged.
Yeah, the dealer's going to get 21 every time we play blackjack. Right. But you're free to play.
Right.
But we don't... The point of getting to vote isn't just to get to vote. The point of voting is that it helps you to work towards something that you want, right? Mm-hmm. And if that isn't possible, then it's really meaningless. You might as well not have the right to vote.
Right.
So the Supreme Court has said if they determine that the map is drawn for that reason to discriminate racially, that it is not allowed, and they'll make the districts be redrawn. Mm-hmm. However, what happens if you're just let's say that it's just Republicans or Democrats that are split up. Mm-hmm. And the racial part, it's not so clear. Like, say it's an area that is really Democratic, and it's kind of racially diverse, right? Right. And they do it then. Well, you can't really say it was done racially, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's not a historically black neighborhood or Hispanic neighborhood or something. Mm-hmm. So the courts to that say, well, the Constitution says they draw the maps, the state, and as long as they're not discriminating against race, because the Constitution says you're not supposed to do that, the 14th Amendment, they say it's okay.
Right.
Other than it being racist and dishonest, I'm not sure what the difference is. It's so there's two things that are wrong with it.
Right.
But cheating's cheating, right?
Yep.
It would be like at a casino, we'd say, all right, if a black person comes in, we can't let the dealer cheat. But if it's anybody else, then it's totally cool. Yeah. But it's still cheating, right? One way or the other.
Yes, it is.
So it shouldn't, if you shouldn't do it for one group, you shouldn't do it for any.
Exactly.
But the courts have not ever gone that far to allow it. So it happens all the time. And it matters because if the game is rigged, one side's going to win,
right?
Then if I'm running for office, well, what do I even care? I have no real competition.
Right.
The deck's been stacked. So you don't really need to work together when you go off to Washington to work, right?
Right.
And so this is one of those reasons that we hate Congress. They do nothing. But we elect all these people where the election's basically fixed for one party or the other.
Right.
And so nothing gets done.
Right.
And we just kind of move on with it. So you end up seeing some very creatively drawn districts, and I think that James has.
Yeah. So if you're like me and none of this shit really makes sense, and you kind of need a picture to go along with it.
None of that makes sense to you.
It did a little bit.
Okay.
I just didn't care that much. So producer James has looked up some pictures of gerrymandering, and I'm going to say what it looks like.
All right.
We ready to go?
This is like looking at clouds. Let's see what
cloud art.
That's several here in Texas. Okay. What is that, like 5 districts, it looks like?
So this is exactly what you were kind of talking about in terms of Austin.
Okay.
So these are congressional districts, and this little bitty blue one right here.
Oh wait, I didn't even see that little bitty blue one.
That's the one I was describing that they, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it bigger so you can see it. See that little bitty blue?
Looks like a lake right there.
Yeah, that's a district. When you see the size of these districts,
and then
you see the size of this one, and it just happens to be
right where that blue one is, that's part of Austin. So that epicenter, you see where all those
and
districts
where is
touch?
Austin at on the map?
See where all those districts touch? It's going to be probably right near the center of those there. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes no sense at all.
And the reason so this is a classic thing, right? They call this cracking. So
cracking.
So Austin has a reputation of being very liberal, which it is.
Yes, it is.
So it would probably elect a Democratic representative. So in order to stop that, you kind of cut up the city of Austin into these little districts like that to prevent that from happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got another one?
I do. I got some more. Here's one from our very own near hometown. This is
one of my favorite ones locally.
Yep. And this is actually a district from someone who is pretty popular right now in the Republican Party.
Whose district is it on there?
This is Dan Crenshaw's.
Okay, right.
So that squiggly thing that's kind of like a rapper's gold chain in shape? Okay.
So they're saying that is a cohesive community
of the city.
Those are
they don't even live by each other.
Those are neighbors, right?
No. They have all these parts that really are neighboring. That it doesn't make sense to me.
What's the joke in Houston? It takes 2 hours. Everything in Houston's an hour away from Houston. That's basically that.
Wow. Okay. So we got a gold chain, a rapper's gold chain. All right.
Next one is from our neighbor state, Louisiana.
Ooh.
And this is essentially a district related to Baton Rouge, or at least the Baton Rouge
So you mean to tell me that whole section that's red, they couldn't make that blue section part of it too? You just took the chunk out of it. It looks like a vagina.
Well,
if we're being honest here, and the blue part.
I was going to say a little bunny part of the blue thing.
Hell no, that looks like a vagina, and the blue part is the middle part.
Well, and so one thing, you leave that up there for a second. So one thing that you notice when you start, like, you're looking for symptoms of gerrymandering, right? Other than sometimes just the smell test, right? You look at it and you go, that looks like Dr. Seuss nightmare picture, right?
It does.
You see like kind of tentacle shapes, snake-like shapes, right?
Yeah.
See how the blue district,
the snake kind of goes with politicians.
Well, there you go, right? See how it kind of snakes out there, and then you see these things where you have a shape like that that's like nestled into another group. Again, why would you not have that like north to south, more like blocked, like, right?
Right.
Usually to do it fair, you can see some districts sometimes, like in the first map that James showed, some of those districts actually are probably appropriate, that you're looking for like major highways, like subdivisions of neighborhoods, like geographic reasons.
That's not appropriate right there.
But I'm going to bet you it's not like we're going to see rivers or something that correspond to that, to where cities have been cut around that.
Right. What you actually see is that the city of Baton Rouge is essentially in the middle of the blue.
Yeah.
And then some of the tendrils are this. Louisiana is really bad for having still historically racially driven districting, especially around New Orleans, Baton Rouge, places where African American populations are condensed.
Yeah.
And
so they
not my kind of African American people. They got some hood
and what can
hood black people in New Orleans.
Well, and I'm going to note too that so traditionally racially it is absolutely a problem, but it is either party can do it. You just have to be the one that is in control of the state legislature at the time you draw the district. So there are also, right, we talk about Republicans doing it more because when the last group of maps was drawn, Republicans had happened to capture a lot of the state legislatures. So they were able to do it a lot more. And it really, like, it doesn't, like in Texas, for instance, sometimes Democrats in Texas will say, well, we're only Republican because of gerrymandering. That is not accurate. there are more Republicans than Democrats in this state right now. That's just sort of a fact. What gerrymandering does is it can exaggerate the majority. It can make it worse than it is, or it can take a state that's really kind of balanced and tip it one way on the margins. But if you go to like California, you're not going to make California a Republican state because you gerrymander. I mean, there's only so much you could do with that map.
Right.
You could mitigate it some, but no, it you know, if it's like, you know, 75-25, I mean, it is what it is. You don't have enough to work with.
Right.
But it deepens that stuff.
You got another one?
I got the last one.
The last one?
This one actually has a
you got Florida? Is this
name.
from Florida?
No, this is Ohio.
Oh, thank God it's not Florida, because all crazy shit happens.
Florida has one of the most notorious. Yeah.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, I like this one because it actually has a name, and we'll see if you can guess. What
I
the
think
nickname is.
He can't guess it. You know, he already knows it.
I've heard this before.
It looks like that. What is that game? Video game Tetris. So am I supposed to guess what that looks like?
Well, you can guess what it looks like. I mean, you can see it has a shape.
It has a nickname.
It looks like a gun at the top, and then a baby bassinet at the bottom.
If I'm remembering correctly, I think you need to think dirtier. I think is.
No. Do I need to think dirty?
No, think of a barnyard, maybe.
Oh.
A cock?
No, God damn it.
I'm thinking of a different one.
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. At the very top, it looks like a gun, a handgun. And at the bottom, it looks like a baby bassinet.
So how about you put them together and tell me if it looks like an animal with maybe a well-known mouth shape?
An animal with a well-known mouth shape?
Uh-huh.
It's a Disney character, I think.
Yes.
A rat?
No.
A mouse?
Maybe not the most famous Disney character, but one of the more well-known.
Yeah. There you go. It's called the duck.
That is a handgun. That is not a duck.
Right. I'm going to expand it.
It'd have to have Detroit, I think, in that district. I don't think it
Let me make it bigger.
Take a look.
Yeah, it looks like a duck.
See?
No. No.
It's
a gun,
famously
baby bassinet at the bottom.
Well, it's famously known as the duck.
Okay. I mean, and I can, you know what? Okay, take it back. I can see, and then that's the little feather in the back.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and the name gerrymander, it comes from a guy, Aldrich Gerry, last name Gerry. He drew a congressional district, and it looked like a salamander. And when the kind of people looked at it, they kind of snickered and said, well, this is a gerrymander. It's one of those gerrymanders, not a salamander. And so... Yeah.
In conclusion, none of that shit makes sense because that is just crazy how it's all.
And let me jump in there, and that's the point, right? Is that it is confusing, but that is precisely why it is an effective way to sort of manipulate fairness of elections. Because since people, I think you're probably fairly representative of people that would say, "Yeah, I get that conceptually, but it's not." It's not like you're taking bribes or something.
Right.
And so it's this kind of complicated, convoluted way of manipulation.
Right.
And so it's easy to kind of slip through and people don't understand it. But what the effect of it is that it makes your vote count less. It makes the outcome predetermined and it stifles stuff. Now there's an irony to this. So in the 2018 election here in Texas, you might have saw, so Democrats did a lot better in this last election. One of the reasons is they draw these these districts every 10 years. And the last time they did it was at the beginning of last decade, right? Well, over time people move around and stuff and the districts change. So actually, some of the districts that were gerrymandered to help Republicans, things had changed to where it would have almost been how Democrats would have drawn it to help themselves. And so in some cases, they had gerrymandered themselves out of the majority because the maps had gotten out of date due to population changes.
Okay.
Like then more Democratic groups had moved into suburban areas and stuff and it messed up the logic. So a big fight right now is you're going to hear a lot of talk for both parties all over the country about we have to win these state elections in 2020 because we will be drawing the next maps for these elections. And that is important because that lets you kind of tilt things more in your favor or not. And there are some ways to do it more fairly. Arizona and California, they elect some people whose only job is to draw the districts and they don't put a party on the ballot.
Nice.
And that helps. I mean, you might still know if somebody's a Republican or Democrat, but it makes it a little less kind of political that way to where they're just saying, what would the fairest way be to do it?
Yeah,
And
Texas would never do that.
we're not good about reform because what would have to happen in Texas is the legislature would have to vote to give up their own power to do it. In Arizona and California, it was like a popular election to change the law, but we don't have that process in Texas to where we can ourselves as citizens propose changes to the state constitution, but they do there. So they were able to overcome it. But in Texas, I would say the prospects are not great. You might get, if it were to happen, if Democrats got enough in control due to the fact they've been beat up with it, they might do it. But then again, the temptation to use the power yourself, might be too great to not just do it yourself and do the right thing. So it's hard. Politicians you're like, do I want to give this up? Now I have the infinity gauntlet. Do I want to use it? I should use it.
Sometimes, do you ever you look at the news or you maybe, just maybe, Thanos
was right.
Had it right. Yes. Okay, so we want to thank you guys for joining us. When is our show going to be broadcast? Monday nights at 8?
We can do it on Monday. Yeah.
But are we gonna? How can they watch it? Just on Facebook?
So it'll be on Facebook and all of our usual
anywhere
Libra
you can
Lounge
listen
outlets.
to the Libra Lounge. You can also hear Petty Politics.
Yeah.
You see how I'm allowing you to ride on my coattail.
And I'm
just
forever
saying,
grateful.
I'm allowing you. I don't usually let people do that. I usually charge them a little bit. I'm going to let you do it for free.
I will not accept bribes I am elected. I will not accept bribes.
So make sure during the election you vote for me and Sean for mayor of Dickinson. And again, make sure.
Who's at the top of the ticket? Is it me or you?
Look, let's just do
Obama,
it the fair way.
Biden, or is it?
No, it's going to be fair.
Is it Owen Skipworth?
We're going to do it alphabetically. And if you do Holman, H, Owens, O, both are before S. Sorry, I can't help what your last name starts with.
Yeah,
my bad.
Skipworth will be on the ballot, so I'd look for that.
Yes,
it's a lot more recognizable. It's not a common name.
My name is going to be at the very bottom where you got to get a magnifying glass to see it. It's going to say vote for Keisha. But anyway, make sure you go and like Sean's page, his mayor page. Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Political page.
Facebook page.
At Skip 4
Dickinson.
Okay, and we will see you guys next Monday.
It was fun. Yeah.
If you have any questions, hit us up.
Yeah.
Alrighty, bye.
Subscribe to the show so you never miss out. Plus, it will make us feel really good about ourselves.
I did it!
And for more laughs, don't forget to check out Keisha and the Libra Lounge. All right, we gotta go potty, so bye.